Hello and welcome to Mindful Living, where we explore the art of living with the intention, balance, and inner peace. I am Avik, your host, guiding you through conversations on health, meditation, mental well being, mindfulness, and the mind body connection. Each episode features expert insights to help you grow, heal, and thrive. So, take a deep breath, relax, and join us on this journey to a more mindful and fulfilling life. So, let's get started.
Hello and welcome back, listeners, to Mindful Living with your host, Sana. Today's guest is a powerhouse in helping women rediscover their vitality and purpose. Meet Heather Stewart. After a career in corporate finance, Heather took a leap of faith to redefine her life and her mission. Fun fact, she's developed the Thriving Life method, helping overwhelmed overachievers create a life that makes their hearts sing. She's also the host of the Back to Me podcast, where she reminds us that taking care of ourselves first isn't selfish. It is essential, necessary. Heather's big mission to empower midlife women to escape societal expectations, replenish themselves, and live a life they truly love. Buckle up for an inspiring conversation, listeners, about why Heather believes there is no such thing as work life balance and how embracing that reality can actually lead to a more fulfilled and thriving life. Heather, welcome to the show. And it is an absolute pleasure having you with us today.
Thank you so much, Sana. I'm very excited to have this chat with you.
Okay, so obviously let's address the elephant in the room. Can you explain why you think work-life balance is a myth and what's a more realistic approach?
Well, it's interesting. If you think about it, do you know anybody who says they have achieved work-life balance?
Mm,
No,
that's
right? Everyone always seems to be working on it, and no one ever seems to get there. So that first maybe when I was in corporate, I first started to wonder, we were all trying to do the same thing and we're all pretty smart. How can nobody be figuring out how to do this? And then I realized parts of the problem are the work itself. If you are in work that invigorates you, if you are in work that makes you feel fulfilled, then you don't feel that need to separate yourself from it. Because when people say they need work-life balance, they feel like they need to pull part of their life out and separate themselves into two parts, work and life. And that's not realistic. You can never really pull yourself into pieces like that. This is what I will do when I'm working, and this is how I will be, and this is what my energy, and then I'm going to reserve the rest of me for the rest of my life, because we do work a lot. I mean, adults spend the majority of their waking hours in work. And if you're in work that is not fulfilling, is draining you, then you will never be able to figure out how to balance that out, because then you spend the other part of your life trying to fill yourself back up again. And it's an equation that never really works. So instead of trying to do work-life balance, what I started realizing was, one, examine the work, because if the work is draining you, you need to address that. And I know some people will say, well, I have to do this job, or I have to do this, or I have to do this. We have options. Sometimes they're not immediate. Sometimes it's you have to look to say, this isn't working for me. In the long term, what will work for me, and how can I move towards it? So knowing that it's not always an overnight cure. We always want,
Mm.
these days, everybody wants everything to be instantaneous. Did you notice this? It's nothing instantaneous. But when I decided that my job was draining me and I wasn't going to find balance and I left, I was in a position where I could do that. I could just leave, I'm done, and walk away. And that doesn't work for everyone. But even when I did that, it did take me time to figure out where my place of harmony was. So I don't, part of the reason I talk about balance is because balance has to be this static place where nothing is moving. It's like it's like a teeter-totter. It's like you're in that center pivot point, and if anything happens, you fall to one side or the other. So instead of balance, I look for harmony, knowing that sometimes something is up, sometimes it's down. And if you can find all of the ways that all of the different aspects of your life supporting you, when something like work, so sometimes you might have to work a little harder or a little longer, but if the other aspects of your life are supporting you, then you can get through that, and then it'll shift back the other way where you can take a little more time for yourself, and you're always ensuring that you are replenished. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does.
Yeah. So harmony is always better than balance.
Yes. Yeah, we have come across discussions on how work-life harmony is more relevant and a realistic approach than just thinking about achieving work-life balance.
Yes.
But some people may argue that achieving a work-life balance is essential for avoiding burnout and leading a healthy life. How do you respond to that, Heather, given your belief that it's a myth?
So I believe there needs to be, I believe that if you separate your life into just life and work, then you are missing what might actually be happening. So instead of work-life balance, I say, look at your whole life and don't try to isolate work, because work is a piece of it, yes. But your life has to do with your physical health, your emotional health, your relationships, so the community around you, your occupation or your job, your financial health, which isn't always related to your job, and then your spiritual health or your engagement or the thing that brings you passion and excitement. So those are the 6 pieces that I usually look at. And sometimes when someone is unhappy or feeling out of balance, they'll blame their work. But it could be something else. It could be the relationships with the people at work. Yeah. I had a client who actually really liked the work that she did, but her job was draining her so much. She was becoming physically unwell. She was fatigued. She was unhappy. So she was emotionally unwell. And the problem wasn't her job. It was the community of people she was working with. So we worked together, and we realized that she didn't need to change what her work was. She needed to change who she was working with. And when she did that, then everything harmonized again. So she was happier, and that made her physically healthier, and she felt engaged, and again, like she was being able to fulfill a purpose. Like this felt like her purpose to do this job that she was doing. But if she had just looked at it as work-life balance, oh, I need to work less because work is draining me, then you would have missed the richness of all of the parts that come with, because work isn't just work. Work is many parts,
Yeah, I agree with that. And thanks for sharing this story, Heather. So, in your coaching, how do you guide midlife women to redefine their relationship with work and life, especially if they have been chasing the quote unquote balance for so long?
Yeah, there's a few things that have to, well, maybe that's too strong. There's some things that will help. So if you think, so sometimes people who are overwhelmed think that there is no space for them at all. So what needs to happen is someone needs to realize that the state that they're in isn't supporting them and is not sustainable. I mean, you can do little spurts of having too much to do, but if we're in that state all the time, it's just not healthy. So I always have these steps to change. So the first is you have to be aware that something isn't right. And once you have that awareness, you have to give yourself the time to try to really understand the core of what is wrong. So, like I was mentioning earlier, some people think it's the work. Sometimes it's not the work. Sometimes it's some piece of something else in your life and it could be something in the work. It could be the work. I mean, for me, it was the work. But taking some time to really set your awareness of what it is that is the core of perhaps why you're overwhelmed or why you're acting in a certain way or what's driving your behaviors. And then realizing that you are responsible for your life. Sometimes this is hard for people because they want to look at the things outside of them and say, this is the reason I have to do this because of this. It's his fault, it's her fault. I have these responsibilities, but not shirking family or responsibilities, but recognizing that your happiness is fully your responsibility. And you need to own that. So when you realize that and you realize what's wrong, you make a decision, and it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be throw everything away and start over. You can start with small steps, take a small step forward and get used to that. But sometimes when I've seen people, they have the awareness, they figure out what's wrong, they decide to change something, but they don't actually take any steps to change it. So they've decided to change. They say out loud, I'm going to make this right, but they never do anything. So you have to actually do something. And it can be scary. Sometimes people won't do it, not because they have too much to do, but because they're too scared of what will happen. So knowing that mistakes are proof that you are trying, and mistakes are actually how the brain learns. If you don't ever make mistakes, your brain won't learn anything new. So understanding, this is one of my favorite things. We were talking earlier, when I was in India, the first time I was listening to the Dalai Lama. He was actually in his residence. I was so lucky. And he said, everything is impermanent, including impermanence. And I thought, what? So everything in your life that feels like it has to stay the same and you're trying to hold it the same will never stay the same. Everything changes every single day. So when you realize that things are going to change and that you can make some of the decisions on how the changes will happen, that should empower you to decide, well, I'm not happy right now. I want to be happy. So to be happier, maybe it's something as easy as I will get an extra hour of sleep a night. And that can actually change a lot of things. Some of the solutions are very easy, but you can't start to feel better unless you look at the thing that's making you not feel well. Don't avoid looking at that thing and hoping it will go away.
True, that is true. Wow. And what are some of the key steps in your thriving life method that help people stop striving for balance and instead focus on creating a life they truly they love?
Right. And I created this thriving life method when I saw that so many people just didn't know even how to start. So the 6 areas that I talked about, the body and the emotion and your community, your job, your financial health, your spiritual health, we spend some time talking about each of those areas. And it depends on the person. And sometimes I run this as a group program where we just kind of go through it together. So each of those areas, you think about what is working. So what actually feels good in that aspect of your life? What feels like it's not working? And physical health is one of the easiest ones because people are very hard on themselves about how they look. So physical health is not how you look on the outside. It is not whether you should be on the cover of a magazine. Your physical health is, do I feel healthy? Can I do the things that I like to do on a regular basis? When I get out of bed, am I falling over, or do I feel like I can get out of bed and walk around? So this is just a physical health aspect. And we look at each of these areas, what's working, what is not working at that time, and maybe some conversation about why that you feel it's not working, or what it is about that doesn't seem correct, what you want to keep in that aspect, and what you might like to add. So we look at each area and we think about it. Now, when we're looking at it, first we just look at it from a fairly high level, and you get a nice picture of those 6 areas. And usually you can tell which area really needs addressing first, because it's not always the thing that we think it is. So, for instance, I think about entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurs work very, very hard. They don't always give themselves time. And when you do this map for them, sometimes the thing that's going wrong is not their business. It's they're not giving themselves enough time to rest. So something that easy that I mentioned earlier, if they gave themselves an extra hour of sleep, then they could actually be more efficient in running their business and have more clarity of mind. So when you lay out these 6 parts, and we'll usually give them a score of 1 to 10, after we talk about them, you give them a personal score of 1 to 10. And the one that is the lowest score is usually the one that if you just start working on that one thing, it will actually elevate the other ones. So if you're physically unhealthy, it's going to make you emotionally unhappy. It's going to affect your work. It's going to affect your relationships because you might not be there for the people that you need. So sometimes it's as easy as, that physical health, you start to improve that a little bit, and that will overflow into making you feel emotionally better and make your relationships better. I had a client who we started working on her physical health. And one day she said to me, Heather, my relationship with my husband is so much better, but we haven't been doing anything different. And I said, you have been doing something different because you have been taking care of yourself. And that has made you more available and energetically open to, whatever's going on. So your relationship was getting better. I was like, she said, oh, yeah, you're right. I said, I know. But you don't always see the connections of all these parts of you, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So can you also share a personal story from your own journey, Heather, where giving up the idea of balance actually led you to more freedom and fulfillment?
Wow. Yes. Well, when I left the corporate world, that was a huge change for me because it's interesting. I was a senior director of finance, and I balanced $1 billion budgets, so I had this very important job. And I can remember I was talking on the phone with one of my colleagues, and one of the projects that I was working on was coming to an end. And at the end of that project, I was probably going to get a promotion. And I said to her, I don't want a promotion because yes, it means more money and more recognition, but it also means more work. It's more time of my life. It's more time away from everything I want to do. I said, I don't want to do that. This woman was laughing. She said, but we work so hard for all these promotions. I said, but I don't want to trade my life for money. So when I recognized that it was, like we say, it just keeps changing. The more you work, the more work you will have to do. I said, I don't want to do this anymore. So there was no way for me to find balance in that role in corporate finance. There was no way for me to find balance, which is why I quit my job. And that's when I actually went traveling in India the first time, looking for balance. And that's why I spent 3 months traveling around in India. And during all that time, I just was thinking. So this is how much time I needed to think. I needed to go away and think about what I wanted my life to look at and what balance what actually was for me or not. And it wasn't about work and life. It was about all of these things that I wanted to include in my life, more than just work, experiences and health and people. And I wanted all of this in my life in a way that supported me and didn't drain me. So I actually remember I was sitting in a cafe. I think I was in Bodgai in a cafe, and I was just had a piece of paper and I was writing all of the parts and trying to figure out how it all fit together. And that's when I said, okay, you don't balance it. You just figure out all of these pieces of a puzzle are you, and all these pieces will fit together, but one can't be more important than the other. They all have to work together.
Yep.
And yeah, right. It's a life-changing place for people who haven't been there.
It is. Well, that's really beautiful, Heather. So before we wrap up, for our listeners who are business owners or leaders, how can they implement this mindset shift in their professional lives to avoid burnout while still maintaining productivity?
Right. So it is taking an honest look at all of the aspects of your life. And maybe you do that thing of take a big piece of paper and write down those 6 categories, the body, the emotion, the community, the occupation, the financial, your spiritual health. What do you want each one to look like ultimately to support you? And versus what does it look like now? And just even give yourself a couple of hours. You are worth a couple of hours of your time and focus. And by thinking about what you want versus what you have, that is where you start to see the pieces of the road that you will build to take yourself to where you want to go. Sometimes I just tell my clients to spend 5 minutes a day daydreaming, because that gives your brain time to unravel the things that are going on in your head. Just stare out the window at a tree and daydream. And these ideas that come to you, write them down. And at some point, you take an action on the one that feels like it's going to move you forward.
Great, Heather. What a lovely conversation. And if our listeners want to connect with you, how they can do that?
Everything you can find is on my website, heatherstewart.coach.
Lovely. We'll have the details mentioned in the show notes.
Thank you.
And Heather, thank you so much for such a lovely conversation today. And it's really inspiring to know how you are busting the myth of work-life balance and helping others understand the value of a more mindful approach towards work-life harmony and have a fulfilling life. So thank you so much for gracing us with your presence.
Thank you, Sana.
And for our listeners, if you want to connect with Heather and explore about her busting myths about work-life balance and the resources she's offering, be sure to check out the show notes along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, this is your host, Sana. Stay mindful, stay present, and stay healthy and joyful. Thank you.